Good afternoon, class. I'm delighted to be here. Actually, my job title is whatever it is. It can be made up. However, I consider myself to be a practitioner. I've been a data geek all my life, but primarily I've been in the consulting industry for the last 25 years. And as I was talking to some students out there, I've worked in multiple industries, been to multiple client sites, and actually traveled from a hydroelectric plant to a nuclear plant to a geothermal plant, all in the span of 1 week, because I was working in the utility industry and at one point, and then I've also been to agricultural farms. So it depends on what type of industry and clients I'm dealing with. And on the other hand, there have been clients in the banking and distribution space. So a lot of things in these 25 years that I've done. But primarily today I'm here to talk about our data-driven future. And as I understand, you have heard from a number of speakers in the past, and the class has also gone on with a wonderful curriculum. Now, it would be remiss for me to not talk about, give you the context of how this thing wraps up and what to look forward to in the future. So, yes, there are a number of slides here. I'll try to move through fairly quickly. But if at all there are questions, just raise your hand and we'll take a pause and we'll see how far we can get through the slides. All right? So, this is how we'll talk about what the data-driven future looks like, and what are the different industry opportunities where you could get involved with, and specifically call to action, what specific things you could do. So, of course, it's no-brainer. We all live in a data-driven world. You know, whether you're watching TV on Netflix, right? The recommendation engine props up what you should be watching. That's application of data. Whether you are interacting with your friends in social media, wouldn't have been possible without data. And so, essentially, from beginning of the day till end of night, till you go to bed, you are surrounded by data, you are generating data, and a lot of times, if you're not paying for a service, you are generating and you are the data point for them, right? So that having said, where is this world going? I mean, people have called data the new oil. And in fact, in my opinion, and I've been saying this for the last 5 years, my title is not only evangelism, I am a practitioner, so I lead teams where we work for clients to enable them through data-driven transformation, basically to achieve some business objectives, leveraging all the data internally and externally. So how do you make sure that just like oil is valuable, data is valuable for them as well? Again, the analogy of oil. Oil needs to be refined before it can be put to use. Same way, data needs to be standardized, harmonized, cleansed, wrangled, or ingested, whatever you may call it, before it can be of any value. So, in the same vein, I've been also saying that since data is so valuable, the next round of World War, if at all it happens, would not be for oil, it'll be for data. You've already starting seeing cybercrime on the rise. You've started seeing how companies were put to ransom. You've seen what happened with the Interview movie, right? The Sony hack. You turn the newspaper, anyway, you don't even need to turn to newspaper, by the way, these days. It's on Flipboard or whatever Twitter feeds or LinkedIn feeds or Facebook feeds you get. Crime is all around us, and crime with data. So these white-collar crime enables us to appreciate the value of securing our data and privacy in data as well. Why is this a perfect storm here? Is it the confluence of forces or something else at work here? So three things are definitely happening here. The business models are always under pressure. At least from my perspective, as I see in my global team around the world, the clients are being asked to deliver more with less. which means they have to become more efficient, they have to optimize their processes, and they have to make sure that they are extracting value from each and every data element that they are processing. Now, another thing that is happening in the industry is that apart from mobile and cloud and social, there's more and more reliance on analytics and security, in addition to what we call as big data. And again, today we may be talking about big data. Essentially, it's data. And big is a very relative term. Now, tomorrow or a couple of years from now, what used to be called the threshold for being considered big data will no longer apply. The technologies are improving, and our capabilities of our computing environment are also improving. So one point which I mentioned was here, a lot of people call it the SMAC addiction. Stands for social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. But again, at IBM, we have called it the CAMS initiative, which is one of our top corporate-wide initiatives to make sure we are delivering value not only to our clients but also to ourselves. So the reality with data is the entire history, whatever data we are seeing, the digital data is not yet fully appreciated. Still, despite all this data being available, executives and leaders are always confused as to whether this is the right data or not. So we have to really improve the intrinsic value of data. And we've also found a lot of studies, both IBM, Institute of Business Value, and other analysts have found that more and more companies, more and more organizations, if they adopt analytics, then they start seeing value in data. Because it's not only generating and getting the data in your environment, it's how you are able to derive insights from it into actionable decisions, which will take your business outcomes further. And so this data industry is being, we are disrupting actually. How we are disrupting? There's a few examples I want to share with you. Anyone heard of Zynga? Facebook, Farmville, whatever, right? In fact, look at the quote out there.
Ken Rubin's down Facebook.
Yeah, he's now at Facebook, but the comment he made, basically they are giving away their games for free, and they are deriving from each and every movement. I don't know how many of you play video games, but my kids do. And I can see how excited they become, how engaged they become, and likewise, I'm sure you realize that while they are giving away their game for free, they are learning from every move that these the players. These are massively parallel games. All around the world, people are playing against each other. So this is generating corpus of data for them to use, analyze, and basically make available for targeted advertising. And as we heard from the previous speaker, that's what is very valuable for making advertisements very personalized and targeted. Another industry that is being disrupted by data is retail. Back in 2000, even earlier than that, when Walmart made it mandatory for their suppliers to adopt RFID, at that time, the cost of a RFID chip was about $5. And people were saying, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? It's going to add to the cost. And today, each and every item can be tracked. What that means, from farm to fork, you can track where that item came from just because of the application of RFID technology. And that technology is also applied to everything that you see in the sensor world. So these RFID tags generate data. There are sensors around us which are generating data. And so this is only proving to not only the volume of data, but also the speed at which these data elements are coming. Another industry, airlines. Again, this can be applied to manufacturing too, but consider if you were to fly from, and tomorrow I'm going to be on the East Coast, so I know if I am traveling via some kind of a Airbus 380, And this particular thing has, it generates 10 terabytes every 30 minutes. And if this is supposed to have 4 engines, 640 terabytes in a single flight. Now, think about what you can do with this data. It's not just generating data for the sake of generating data, but being able to identify what component of the engine might fail, because that each component is able to send some signals. Previously, we were never able to analyze that. Today, the technology, the big data technologies let you do that. Yeah. So another disruptor is this company, Waze, which is a crowdsourcing platform. I'm sure all of you know that this was one of the pioneers there, which adopted cloud as well as crowdsourcing and big data, and it got acquired by Google. And thanks to it, we can save a lot of time finding alternate route in real time. Another company in Brazil, and this is one of my favorites. Anyone heard of this company? Smart Hangers? So this is a retailer which leverages social media, social buying patterns, as well as the behavioral instincts of millennials, essentially. I have millennials in my home, 2 girls, and typically when they go to mall, they want opinion of somebody else, specifically their friends, whether they should buy a dress or not. Yeah? It's unlike men who know what to buy, go to a section, pick it up and buy. Girls behave differently, at least that's my experience. In this case, this retailer CNA, what they have done is for each item of clothing that they carry in the store, they have a hanger which is linked to the internet and has a Facebook counter. So each time somebody tries and likes it, presses a button, boom, that dress's popularity grows in social media, and thereby, people can, showcase what they're buying. So these technologies, cloud, analytics, mobile, social, and security, these kind of technologies are now converging into what we call as Internet of Things, or some folks call it Internet of Everything. And look at the amount of number of interconnected devices we are talking about. Population of the Earth may be about 7 billion, and if we say everybody has a device, well, in the developed world, each of us have at least 2 to 3 devices currently. In a couple of years, they predict by 2020, people will start having up to 10 devices, at least in the developed world. So think about the proliferation of all these devices, and each of these devices will be sending signals. And unless you are able to convert the volume, the velocity, variety, and the veracity of data, of all this data that is being generated, you are not really getting value out of it. Let me see if I have some. No, it's not here. Anyways, there are some examples of some of our clients who are beginning to actually realize value from it. For example, one of the governments, again, this is before Snowden leaks, we couldn't even talk about it, but yes, there are technologies that we had invented which were used by the government agencies, and if they are looking to analyze data in real time, it used to take a lot of hours, but there are technologies now, big data technologies available, which can reduce that duration to milliseconds. And again, at speed, at remarkable scale, and with great degree of accuracy. Another utility which can basically balance between demand and supply of electricity through smart meters and through the smart grid. They are able to analyze petabytes of data in real time and basically incent end users to use electricity at times when the rates are low. And so things of that nature which are helping different industries. I'll take one more example here right now, telcos. And the biggest challenge that telcos have is churn. Anyone from the telecom industry? So maybe not here, but I see a lot of telcos in Asia which rely on analyzing all the data that comes through the switches. Now, if you are able to predict when somebody is going to churn, and churn is the biggest problem actually in the telco industry, especially in Asia, where unlike us, there are prepaid customers, which means loyalty is not ensured. And as per the analysis, we found that if a subscriber had 6 dropped calls in a month, he or she is more likely to switch to the next vendor. So what do? You've got to make sense of this data, right? All kinds of call data records, XDRs we call them now, call data records, and all those signals that are coming in, you analyze, and before the 5th, at around the spot of the 5th dropped call in a month, you generate a promotion code and send to their phone via a text message, SMS, whatever it is, and say, okay, so sorry that you have had trouble with our service. To compensate for that, we'll give you 2 gigs of extra data this month. Or we'll give you 30 minutes of international calling this month. So basically, that person sticks on. And this has really become the foundation block of what we call as a next best action solution set that integrates data analysis, big data, and call data records, and actionable insights in real time. Moving on. So that was what is happening. Yes.
Right. So, when you talk about IBM and how IBM has helped these clients, just say a few words about kind of IBM's business model. I know that's not the focus of your talk, but we've been talking in this class about how certain industries like the provision of hardware services have become commodified, and then we've got other things like analytical tools, which have some of them have become commodified, open source, and then you've got kind of consulting-like services where companies will come in and kind of solve a specific problem or help formulate a specific problem. Where is it that companies are situating themselves now in order to carve out a protectable strategic niche? And IBM in particular is interesting because they were so reliant on hardware at one point.
Absolutely, great question. Now IBM goes through transformation almost every 10 years. And the kind of transformation we are seeing right now at IBM is unprecedented. So if you recall, back in early 2000s, we were getting about 50, or if we go back to 1950s, 100% revenue from hardware. Move forward, 1980s, 1990s, we started getting 25% of our revenue from software, expanding the pie. At about 2005, we sold off our hardware manufacturing of the laptops or the personal computer division, and we followed up with another sale of our not only the mid-size servers but also the chip division, chip manufacturing division. We still do design, but we don't manufacture because we are moving. Our strategy is to move away from lower margin businesses to higher value businesses. So our revenue pie is now increased in terms of services and software. And as we go forward, you rightly said, people are no longer even buying hardware, but at the same time, Fortune 500, there's not a single Fortune 500 customer out there who doesn't have a mainframe, an IBM mainframe. We just had a record-breaking quarter in terms of our mainframe sales because we are introducing better quality, higher features, and those mainframes we are upgrading with both hardware, software, and firmware capabilities that clients want. But that's not the focus. The focus going forward is going to be solutions on the cloud. For that reason, we have acquired about 30 companies in the last 8 years, spending close to $24 billion in the analytics space itself, the space that I represent, right? So I come from the consulting background, spent about a few years in PricewaterhouseCoopers before being acquired by IBM 13 years back. Now, I have seen the transformation in the consulting industry as well. So as we stand here today in IBM, I feel even the consulting business is up for some kind of a change.
So does that mean that, so IBM, from the client's perspective, they can go to an Accenture, then go to an IBM for solutions. What competitive advantage would an IBM have in that it has these other assets, right? Like servers and like software, which a normal consulting firm doesn't have.
Right.
They would need to point them in the direction.
So from that perspective, we still maintain, as IBM Global Business Consulting Services, we still maintain our independent hat, and we don't always recommend IBM products. We look at where the client situation is, what's the best solution for them, and if it means IBM products, great. If it means a mix of IBM and ISVs, great, again. But we are not tied to any technology, point number one. Point number two, the greatest advantage clients have with coming to IBM for solutions is we can leverage our IBM research and development organization, where we spend close to $5 to $6 billion every year in fundamental research. And again, those researchers are now focused on high margin areas of data, analytics, and mobility, and security. Now, that having said, we can bring certain assets which are developed, which are not software products, but they are assets, IP, the patents that we generate, 22 years in a running, highest number of patents in the world with IBM. We can bring those patents to market for our client needs as part of our consulting engagements. So that's the differentiating factor that IBM GBS has, and that's what keeps me excited coming to work every day. And that having said, the next wave is where everybody is going into the cloud. So for that reason, we acquired a cloud company as well, Software, a couple of years back, and we are rapidly expanding. And yes, we do hear about Microsoft Cloud, we do hear about Amazon Cloud, but IBM Cloud just released its numbers, and we're not too far behind the leaders. And the focus being, we will become the #1 cloud company as well. Why? Because the solution delivery through the cloud is what gives us not only margins, but also benefits to our clients, that they don't have to worry about hardware buying, software install, config. They can focus on their own core business, and we will help their problems, solve their problems. Okay? All right, moving on to the future. I was supposed to spend only 15 minutes in the previous section, but regardless, the future is already here. Yes?
So before we do one comment about like IBM's transition to software company, I think, could you say something about IBM and its role with the open source software and how it has helped contribute as well as evolve on that side of things?
I'll very briefly talk about IBM disrupting itself by embracing open source back when the days of, there used to be a Unix operating system called AIX. And obviously we were making good money on it. And at that time we invested in that business in Linux and spent $100 million and reaped $1 billion of business out of it within a short span. So by embracing open standards, by embracing open source, we have seen an example in the hardware market and operating system market. Similarly, we are doing in the software market as well, especially in the big data world, where our offering of the big data software called Big Insights is built on top of the open source Apache Foundation Hadoop, right? But at the same time, we are contributing to other industry initiatives to bring other players together as part of Open Data Initiative, where other vendors are joining in. And we want to basically, from the experimental software that Hadoop is today, to an enterprise-wide robust software which becomes the operating system of the data centers of the future. So all of that couldn't have happened if IBM hadn't committed itself to open source. In fact, we have a very high-ranking executive at the VP in charge of open source in IBM. So the future, of course, wouldn't be good to talk about the future unless we talk a little bit more about the past, long before any of us were born. I don't know, Greg, you and I were also not born then, right? So that was the tabulating era where everything used to be on a piece of hardware which had to be cranked, and those were special machines which were operated by punch cards. So from the tabulating era to move forward to 1950s, where computers were invented with the von Neumann architecture, and basically that was the era where computers had to be taught. So that was, you know, a programmable era. You had to tell them what to do. Fast forward 2011, when one of our grand challenges are the projects that IBM undertakes to change the world. That project basically took the public eye with Watson winning the Jeopardy game. And what that is, if you have been not living under the rock, I'm sure you have heard what Watson does. And in brief, it's a self-learning cognitive system which is ushering in a totally new era of computing, whereby machines are learning and they are able to augment the capability of the humans. And you know, one of the greatest examples where Watson was first applied to was in the healthcare space to prevent, to cure cancer. So we'll see an example as we go forward. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that this is where the future is headed, and whether it is the machines taking over the world or not, that's still debatable. But I'll talk a little bit about it. You had a question? Okay. So this was what I was talking about. When this project started, we had no clue whether this can even be done. It was started in 2005 as a possible way of asking a question to a computer, and the computer doing it, responding, and performing that. So this is called natural language processing. Now, from those conceptual days to now, and 2011, and then commercialization of Watson, today the computer that won the software is in its fourth generation, I believe, since 2011, and the size of the hardware has been reduced from this size room to the size of a pizza box. Advancements in technology, advancements in software, and the capability. And we are applying this Watson technology to not only medicine, but also in wealth management with banks. We are applying this. In fact, I just heard that even the law industry, the lawyers are very much afraid of Watson now. So, and there's no industry untouched by Watson, by the way. So we carved out a separate division last year onwards, where every industry that you can conceive of will think about how Watson can be applied there. But let's go back to the basis of this. Yes?
So question related to Watson. How is IBM trying to monetize it? Is it in the mainframe era where the mainframe was rented out for specific tasks? Is IBM doing, what is the business model around it? Could you talk to? So
yeah, that is exactly, to monetize Watson is what we did in January of 2014, I believe. The Watson division was formally launched. So a little over about 1.5 years. And one of the things is not everybody can afford Watson, right? So what do? And this machine needs to learn. It needs to read up all the documents that are available, read up the latest publications that are happening, and look for whatever data point it can get, and intelligently give you options to basically augment human capability. Now, decision-making capability. Now, so one of the things that we are excited about is making Watson available on the cloud. So physicians who could be able to get service of Watson through subscription, and we are looking at that for other industries as well. But as I said, we've done some fundamental work with hundreds of medical practitioners outside of IBM to really train this system very well in the field of medicine. And that's our first thing. In fact, I have to also share, while we're talking Watson, that IBM decided that healthcare is a big problem, not only in the US, in the world over. So we announced just last month a brand new division of IBM Healthcare, one of the first thing is Watson Healthcare. It'll be applied to all types of diseases, all types of problems within healthcare, from readmissions problem to medical fraud. All of that can be applied within the Watson umbrella. So that's the monetization aspect of it. All right. New business models. I think we talked about Netflix, but think, so there are some of these examples. I think I didn't talk about Runkeeper, but it's basically, again, applying healthcare. We are talking a lot about health. Basically, as part of the quantified self, where we are really enamored by all the data that these sensors that we wear on our wrist, or whatever we are, whether the sensors are in our shoes to track our movements, all of that data, if it can be made available to improve our health, that is what this kit is talking about. So these new industries and newer business models are being generated just because of the application of analytics. Another field, again, analytics applied to whether it is genomic data for personalized medicine, whether it is for agriculture to improve the yield per unit of land, or whether it is for energy, environment, and any other industry, you name it. So we've got examples where we are working. And so this particular thing is from our research labs. Some of this may not even see commercial light for maybe many, many years. But there is fundamental work happening in collaboration with clients who want to really partner with the talent pool that IBM has, as well as some of the technologies that we've invented. So where does this lead us to? You're all executive MBA students, so basically you want to be entrepreneurs, right? Now, how do you, and rightly so, you guys asked the right question. How do you monetize these technologies? There are business models you've got to think of. There are ways that you generate IP, which you can then further license, or to make the valuation of your company high so that it can be sold off. So all of that, if you look around, there are other companies who are working in the space of driverless cars, or being able to vary the rate of energy by the hour, or being able to provide awesome healthcare services. All of this is changing the focus from being reactive to strategic, and so that generates a lot of opportunities. There are data products. These are some of the early data products, if you want to relate to what can data do. So if at all you're looking for ideas to build products, many of these were done as side projects within these companies, be it LinkedIn, Google, or Netflix. But these are some popular brands that you recognize, and some of these things you may have already used. And I'm just mentioning this here in the sense that everybody around us is focused on making money out of data. And if you're not, game over. It's very powerful. And it's the invisible thread that is actually transforming our lives. So what specific opportunities would you like to take on? I've talked a lot about some of these. I think I talked about the security and cybersecurity. And so one of the real life applications we did was for a couple of cities. Actually, we started back in Ireland with the city of Dublin. The amount of time people spend on the road because of unplanned city growth, that's literally not justifiable. Not to say that it also causes carbon emissions, and it also causes issues out there. So How do you prevent that? By having a real-time traffic optimization solution. So we did that for Dublin. We did that for many other cities around the world, Singapore, you name it, and then again in the US as well. And these are repeatable solutions which we take to market. Fraud and risk detection. Very simple. You use your credit card here, but if that there is a fraudulent activity on your credit card, you expect your card provider to catch it in real time. It happened with me, and I was so glad I got that call. I was in Brazil, and I get a call saying, hey, I noticed that your card was used in Brazil yesterday and today in California. How is that? So we have put a hold on your card. Is that right? So I was so thrilled that this technology is being put to use. Likewise, people will all talk about being customer-centric. But you can't be customer-centric unless you understand your customer fully. And yes, people have spent millions of dollars in data warehouses. Companies have spent millions of dollars in making a master data management solution. But unless that data, transactional data, is combined with social data and what is happening up to the minute with that customer, or even their intent to buy, all of that combined together becomes an integral factor in customer centricity measures. So there are things that retailers use on that front. And I think we have already talked about retail and telco, so I'll move on from here. Just to give you a glimpse of the opportunities ahead in terms of lifestyle. I mean, we are moving in the world where wearables will be in fashion, and apps, it's an app economy. In fact, I want to say that IBM is actually not only transforming internally, but also establishing certain ecosystem partnerships, which is to be noted. Notable is the Apple plus IBM partnership, which is taking us very deep into making applications for the enterprise available, and both companies are to benefit from there. We've also had announcements with respect to Twitter partnership and the Weather Channel partnership, and we'll see how those monetize. Yes?
One of the previous speakers today was talking about how past few decades, like a retailer like Safer was just collecting data but didn't really do anything with it. Do you feel like wearable health app, wearable devices are still in that mode? It's just collecting data. Like, I'm not getting any recommendations on my own personal health at this point. So is it just, we're still in that phase of just data collection for a lot of these industries and these verticals?
It is the integration factor, and I think we are at the beginning of a revolution there in the healthcare. And for that reason, you may not have seen it, but I'm telling you, the Apple Watch, the primary reason people are buying it is for the healthcare link, the healthcare kit that comes with it. The sensors are there, and they all that data collected and to be sent to your physician as well as to you, and then the recommendations coming out of it. Yes.
The recommendation engine, it's pretty low value because it's just
exactly, and not only recommendation based on what you are performing based on that sensor, but also your medical history, your exercise history, your eating behavior. There are apps for it. Unless these are integrated, there's a problem. But to your point, retailers in the past have been saddled with legacy architectures, legacy hardware and software, and they have not been agile enough to leverage the newer technologies. But I can tell you, we are working with the topmost retailers, at least 4 or 5 of them as we speak, to modernize all that. And the innovations in retail space with respect to leveraging data and big data and data science are unimaginable. You'll see some of these glimpses here. I'll just quickly move ahead. Automotive industry. This is not only driverless car, but if the car was to track its movement, basically it is looking for what parts could fail when. So predictive maintenance there. It could schedule appointments on its own. In fact, modern day cars have more code in them to be called as computers on wheels than automobiles, actually. I mean, I don't look at the computer manual anymore, the car manual anymore for maintenance. It automatically not only gives me a ding on my dashboard, but my car dealer automatically sends me a reminder saying you may be getting some indication from your car that it's due for oil change. So all of this system integrated basically improves our lives, but at the same time it improves margins for people involved. Automobile manufacturer knows about all the history of the car, how it is being used, and also they can sell this data to insurers. And the insurers can offer you a discount for carrying that special tracker in your car, which will let them price insurance differentially. And that is, again, if we are ever able to commercialize the driverless car, which should happen in the next 3 to 5 years, it'll prevent collisions. It'll prevent the losses that insurance industry goes through. So all of this disruption is an opportunity for you guys to get in and get into any part of the ecosystem and start. And we've already talked about all of this in the previous one. Retail, we were talking earlier. How do you respond to when retailers today can not only look at inventory optimization, but also how to place an item where on their shelves? There are video trackers which tell you how many times a person or a customer bent, what was the movement that from the gate, entry gate to the exit gate, because it is integrated with your mobile phone, with the apps and the beacons there which are within the retail store. And they can identify you through your mobile number with your social media profile. They can already know that you had already initiated some search for certain items. What if somebody like you, who has done all this homework before walking into Macy's, is encountered by an agent? They see that you might be looking for a Armani suit and guides you to that. All of that is possible now. Again, integrating supply chain, vendors, and buying patterns and rewarding customers, again, within the retail, all of that hyper-personalized and contextual shopping is possible. Finance. Anyone heard of Bitcoins? How many of you own Bitcoins? No one. Okay. So that's the digital currencies are, again, there to disrupt the banking system. Those are, again, we have been predicting that we'll stop using our wallets. We'll use our mobile phones. Apple is now getting into it in a big way, but before that, last time I was in Japan, and I was amazed at how people were just pulling their phones out and going through, and I was still struggling with finding the right credit card to buy a ticket. So some countries are much more advanced in this. Anti-fraud applications, we had already talked about how the credit card manufacturers were, providers were using that. There are other applications in finance of anti-fraud technologies, anti-money laundering. All of that leverages data. So this is an example, data as a service using social analytics. So basically, typically, when you do an analysis of your customers, retailer more precisely basically tries to understand its customer better. They might have a few parameters on which they are either segmenting their customer base by age, sex, geolocation, or propensity to buy, and all that stuff. This model, this product that we have in our IBM research labs, it produces a profile of a user just by looking at 200 of their tweets, and produces a profile which has 60 different variants, parameters. And it is, we are already working with a number of companies in the retail space, hotel chains, airlines, government departments, to basically make them more aware and more closer to their end customer. So this is a perfect example of making data available as a service. And again, I think we had talked about micro-segmentation earlier, but then there are other innovations, Watson Insights. This is an influencer analysis, is another project that I was personally involved in a couple of years back where we were supposed to, I don't think I can say in front of the camera, but maybe I'll talk offline. Essentially, it is to find out who are the influencers of the public policy and being able to identify them from blogosphere, Twitter, Facebook, all those feeds, and then making sure their behavior is transformed. So influencing the influencers was, and it was such a research problem that we ended up filing a couple of patents as part of that project. So, and that was for a real customer. Nothing more beyond that on camera. So there are other public-private partnerships that we've been working to change the world. Traffic congestion we talked about, intelligent city operations. We've been working with more and more utilities, public agencies to make their cities and the governments smarter and using newer ways of using data. Another example where you could get involved is contributing to the data market space. So Open Data Initiative was launched a few years back in the US, and that model has spread around the world. Citizens become data scientists, leverage those data sets. And the cost of getting involved is so low now. A lot of these, you can rent space on a cloud provider for pennies on the dollar. You don't have to buy hardware or software. You can get it on trial. So much so that, I'll give you an example from IBM. IBM Ecosystem Group, basically, if you leverage IBM Cloud Platform, they give away up to $120,000 worth of cloud storage and services free for 1 year for a small startup. So that's an amazing example of how the entrepreneurs today are being encouraged to leverage data and cloud technologies and be successful. So finally, 3 calls to action. And depending on how much time we have, we can get into the depths of it. But
we have 5 minutes.
Okay. Acquire skills in the CAMS area, embrace data science, and dream big to change the world with data and analytics. And some case studies I want to present, especially Greg asked me to look at environment and smarter cities. And so I'll just go through some of them. I think we've talked a lot about healthcare. These are the different areas within healthcare that we have already. These are real clients that we're working with. And this is an example where we are teaching Watson to...
More and more, data is visual. In fact, the number of MRIs has increased by 10% a year. And a radiologist might view 1,000 images to find one tiny abnormality in shape, contrast, or movement. Because it's so challenging, our research project is teaching IBM Watson to see. In the future, it can help clinicians spot key patterns quickly and precisely. IBM Watson is working to make healthcare smarter every day.
This is a baby. A baby generating data in a neonatal ward. Every heartbeat, every breath, every anomaly, from over 1,000 pieces of unique information per second, helping doctors find new ways to detect life-threatening infections up to 24 hours sooner. On a smarter planet, analyze the data and you can predict what will happen faster. So you can do what they're doing in Toronto and build a smarter hospital. Let's build a smarter planet.
By the time police arrive on a crime scene, they can have little to go on. A vague description. A single piece of evidence. A partial plate number. With an app from IBM, officers can now access over 1 billion police documents to find hidden connections and identify potential suspects. IBM Analytics helps 100,000 officers work smarter every day.
All right. So if you can get back to the main presentation, and then we'll just get to it. So those were some vignettes I just wanted to share what we are doing. And we've already talked about quantified cells, a number of examples of hospitals that we are working with. And this is an energy company, one of our first very, very early adopters of our big data platforms, who basically uses the big data and analytics technologies to figure out where to place these windmills to generate clean energy, what angle to put the blades on. Basically, these are very expensive items, and they have to be put at the right angle, proper angle, to maximize their efficiency. And how do you determine what's the right angle? By looking at the weather patterns, by looking at the geolocation, and with accuracy, what specific point it has to be installed. And basically, these have lives of 30 years. So it's a 30-year, so it's an investment that is recouped over 30 years to generate clean energy. And if in the earlier days, without using big data technologies, the scientists who were actually, data scientists who were actually doing this, they were using models on their computers and doing it. They were taking up to 60 days to determine the optimum location for each of these machines, these windmills. By leveraging the big data technologies, they are able to complete that process within a few hours. So that's the power of leveraging data and technology for work. Another example where this is in the energy sector, being able to identify leveraging the weather patterns, leveraging what's happening with the forecast of the climate, basically. These are very expensive oil rigs in middle of nowhere, which are drilling and generating oil. Now, if the icebergs and the floating ice basically strikes it, what happens? Environmental disaster, loss of life. We have all seen these kind of disasters. We want to prevent it. To improve safety, you basically determine all leveraging big data and technology which we are supplying. You predict the movement of those ice flows and evacuate these structures or change the direction as much as so that you are able to minimize the impact if at all the strike happens. So all of that should hopefully, there are more examples here in this deck. More city, I won't go through those, but maybe Intelligent Operations Center is an example where we worked for not only the city of Rio de Janeiro, but many cities to be able to let the city planners look at the enterprise, citywide data, be it sewer systems, be it water systems, be it electricity systems, and basically enable them to react at the time of a disaster in much agile fashion. And so that again leverages real-time data. And that's pretty much it. I'm open to any questions. And the picture you see there is from TIE. I'm involved with TIE. Anyone of you heard of TIE? So as part of the upcoming TIECon, we can make a special offer. Actually, that conference is happening 15th and 16th of this month. We can get you a absolutely phenomenal student discount. Let me know, and I'll send you the details. As long as you identify as a student of Greg here, you will get that student discount at, I think, 1/4 the price. So I know typically it's only meant for regular students, but we'll make an exception for executive MBA students as well. Plus, there are a number of assets. You will find this material. Yes?
They're the best kind of students.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you'll get, it's like an MBA in 2 days, if at all you've ever gone there. So I was chairing that conference a couple of years ago, last 2 years. This year I am just there as a participant and attendee. You'll learn a lot. And then there are a number of examples here of some of the free resources and books that IBM research and white papers that are there. So with that, I would say, think big, and time to act is now. Thank you very much.